Thanks very much for coming. This is kind of a new piece of our budget process this year. As you know, I've traditionally, since my first year in office, conducted a public information session before I send my final budget to the county council. It's not required of the county executive, but I've always felt that it was important to engage the community as part of the process before we make our final decision and what goes to the county council. We've added a new element this year. We'll have 3 similar presentations to what we're doing tonight, with the intention of educating the community as to the nature of our fiscal challenges, show everybody just where we are. I think it's important to us in government, whether it's in my office in the executive branch or with the county council in the legislative branch, that our public knows the same information that we know, that we all are starting from the same base of understanding. And so this is a series of outreach efforts to engage our community and hopefully have a good dialogue so that when we do come to decision-making time, that we can do so from a position of understanding and mutual commitment to the things that are important to us. We'll meet again tomorrow night at the Hebron Firehouse at 7 p.m. We're going to meet a third time on the east side of the county at the Pittsville Fire Hall on Monday evening. It's also at 7. And then at some point before our budget goes to the county council, we'll have one more kind of comprehensive community effort to bring everyone together and take a look at the budget as it's evolving at that point. Before I go on, I would like to just acknowledge and thank some elected representatives of our community that are here tonight. From the Wicomico County Council, we have Councilman John Hall. And over here is Councilman Bobby Culver. From the City Council, there's Laura Mitchell. And I saw Tim Spees. There he is. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Any other elected officials that I haven't been able to catch? All right, we're also very pleased to have Dr. Ray Hoy, the president of Warwick Community College, with us tonight. Thank you, Dr. Hoy. And we have a very nice contingent from our local Board of Education. I see the Comptroller Bruce Ford here. Could I ask our Board of Education friends to stand and let folks see who you are? Yeah? Okay. All right. And I would also like to ask our county department heads that are attending to please stand. All right, well, thank you very much. While I'm doing the thank yous, I'd like to thank PAC 14, who is taping tonight's event, and it will be available through the PAC 14 site and also on the county webpage. So please check it out if you want to double check on something you may or may not have heard. Our process tonight is pretty straightforward. Wayne Strausberg, who is our new Director of Administration, has been working for well over a year now, analyzing, compiling, putting together statistics that give a very comprehensive and also a very ominous view of the situation that Wicomico County finds itself in today as we struggle to do the things people expect of us. You know, we in local government are basically charged with 3 things. We have to keep our community safe, we have to educate our children, and we have to provide infrastructure where we can expect to be able to drive down a road and not see our car go out of alignment because it's not being maintained. We're also expected to provide parks and playgrounds, libraries, some of the more social benefits through our health department and some of the other things that people look to from a complete, well-rounded community. All of those services cost a great deal of money. That money comes from us as taxpayers. I've been saying now for several years as we've been in this economic crisis that we have some tough decisions to make as a community. We have to decide just what kind of community we want in Wicomico County and what are we willing to pay for it. And those are important questions that each of us as citizens must come to understand, because no matter how bad the crisis is around us, we still have little children who are depending on us to teach them so that they can go out in the world and compete with graduates from all over the world for the best jobs. We have citizens, all of our citizens have a right to feel protected at night when they go to bed in their homes. And we do have a right to expect that our tax dollars are going to make our community solid and complete. And so this is an engagement that doesn't just involve those of us in government. I spent a lot of time in the last couple of years reminding folks that, it's so easy to talk about our rights as citizens, but we have responsibilities as citizens too, and those responsibilities include becoming engaged in government, becoming a part of the process. And so when we're putting together a budget that's going to affect how our county operates for the next year, it's so absolutely critical that our citizens are a major part of that exercise. And so we do solicit your comments, we solicit your advice, we solicit your money. And together we're going to have the kind of county that, as I've said before, makes all of the from heres and the come heres want to be stay heres. That's our charge and that's our goal. So tonight Mr. Salzberg is going to run through a PowerPoint presentation kind of giving you the overview of the fiscal situation in Wicomico County as it is today. At the completion of his presentation, we'll throw the floor open for questions, comments. We'll take notes. Anything that we don't know answers to tonight, we certainly will find out and get back with you. We do ask that you come to the center mic there on the floor, identify yourself, and then just go ahead and present your question or your concerns. With that, thanks once again for coming, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Salzberg.
Move this real quickly. I'm pleased to be here and go through this presentation with you. As Rick mentioned, we're going through a little bit of a different process this year with regard to our budget. We've directed our departments and our grantees to submit flat budgets as our starting point. We've then undertaken a 4-year trending analysis. We've done that line by line and department by department. We've isolated and challenged any anomalies. In other words, if we go back 4 years on a line item and we see aberrations, we've asked that those aberrations or those anomalies be explained so that the funding request for this year makes sense as you look back over a 4-year history. Any requests for new funding require a clear demonstration of need. There's a very rigorous challenge process with regard to any new spending. We're also affording the public multiple opportunities for input prior to us finalizing the budget that we're going to submit to the county council. We feel that as we go through this process, inviting public input and providing the best knowledge that we have, the best information that we have to the public is going to lend itself to a better final product that we send over to the county council. You may have seen this before, but I want to set the stage, if you will, for where we are in fiscal year 12. Our sources of revenue, 54.2% of our revenue comes from property taxes. That's real property and personal property taxes. Another 32% comes from local income tax. That's nearly 80% of our total revenue. Okay? So if you're going to move the needle, on revenue, those are the areas that you have to look at. You don't have big chunks of revenue anyplace else. Conversely, if you look at the expenses by function, you can see that education is nearly 48%, public safety and health is 31.5%, so again, we're close to 80% in those two areas. And once again, when you go looking for big chunks of money, you're not going to find big chunks of money any place other than those areas. You'll find some, but I refer to them as nickels and dimes and not dollars. Our budget history. You can see that in fiscal 2008, we were at $132 million budgeted. In fiscal year 2012, we were at 108.2. That's almost a $24 million drop in that time period. We are anticipating revenue for fiscal 13 to be at about $111 million. Just to put that into context for you. This is a very interesting slide that Andy Mackel prepared. It shows you the history of our revenue, which is the green line, and our expenses, which is the red line. And you can see that as we got into the boom, if you will, in the construction boom, from about fiscal 5 through fiscal 7, we had a nice peak with regard to both revenue and correspondingly with expenses. The interesting thing is when you go out, is this thing working? You probably can't. Uh-oh, what did I do, Gary? There we go. You can't see it. If you go out to fiscal 2013 and you come back on this purple line, what you'll see is that we're now operating in an environment that's very similar to fiscal 2004 and 2005. And you're going to see that repeatedly as we go through these slides. We're operating as a community, as a county, in an environment that is based in where we were back in 2004, 2005. The reality of it is that the boom that both the country and this county experienced from 5 through 7, 8 was an illusion. It's gone. We've reset back in 2004, 2005. So our expectations have to be grounded in 2004, 2005. Our economic base. Probably most people here know that. We've reminded people up in Annapolis of this repeatedly over the past couple of weeks. Agriculture. We're the #1 producer in the state of Maryland. The state of Maryland's #1 economic driver is agriculture. So we're #1 in the #1 economic base that this state enjoys. Higher education. We're very fortunate to have Salzberg University and Warwick Community College. We're very fortunate to have a regional medical center that's growing. Hospitality and retail, we're the Tri-County hub for hospitality and retail. Professional and business services that support all of the above. Housing and construction that led the boom from 2002 to 2007 and then led us into the bust. That's what drives the economy here locally. Now, to put in perspective how the construction and housing collapse has impacted this county, this chart shows you the trending on recordation tax revenue. And you can see we peaked at about 2006, and then we dropped off a cliff. If you go out to 2011, we stabilized. And what you're seeing is a trend line out through 2015 that indicates that that isn't going to change. We've got a very, very flat sector. Very flat sector. Let's talk about employment. From the peak to the trough, we lost about 4,700 jobs in this county. Our current, we stair-stepped a little bit, and now we're growing very, very anemically. Again, you're seeing essentially a flat line. If you bring that line back, I don't know why this isn't showing up, but if you bring that line back, again, you'll see that our employment is really back at the level it was in about 2004, 2005. And what you're going to see is that employment is going to stay fairly flat. There are absolutely no indicators that would lead anyone to believe that we're going to have a significant growth in employment. Go back to what our economic base is and go back to what drove the boom. That construction industry, that housing industry is not going to come back with any vibrancy for at least another 2 to 3 years. The current market indicates that about 36% of the sales taking place are either short sales or foreclosures. We're expecting in this assessment cycle those houses assessed to drop in value about 8%. So our assessable base, while it's not dropping at 28 to 30% like it was, has still not really bottomed. It's still dropping. It's not dropping as dramatically. So go back to our source of revenue, go back to the fact that 54% of our revenue is coming out of property taxes, both real and personal, and you see a very flat line and you see a base that's still falling. So we've got a falling assessable base with real property. We've got a flat line on employment, which indicates a flat line on income tax receipts. Income tax revenue, that's following the same curve that you saw or the same trajectory that you saw with employment, and that follows. If more people aren't working, you're not going to derive more income taxes. Again, if you bring the line back where we are in fiscal 12, if you were to draw a line across, you'll see that we're back in about 2004, 2005 in terms of income tax receipts. Cumulative change in 12-month employment since the pre-recession peak. What we've shown here, and it's very hard to see this line, I'm going to point it out to you. The Wicomico County line is down here. It's this very light blue line down here. And you can see the difference between Wicomico County and how steeply it dropped and how much further it fell off than Talbot County, Dorchester County, Caroline, and Somerset. And that's driven by the fact that we had a very, very vibrant housing boom down here that other counties on the lower shore weren't experiencing. So when things tanked, we had further to fall. We're climbing out of it a little bit, but you can see that there's still a significant difference between where we are and really where the rest of the shore is. And then if you compared us to the West Shore, it would be even more dramatic. Restated sales tax receipts, you can see that same trend line. You can see how much further Wicomico dropped off than any of our neighbors. And we're flatlined here. We've just started to level out. Okay? Now those receipts don't come directly to the county, but that is a very clear indicator of economic activity. And it shows you that we really fell off a cliff and we've just begun to stabilize. But it's a flat line. It's not curving back up. You can see Somerset County, it's going back up. Dorchester's still flat. The state is moving back up. Worcester is moving back up. We're still flatlined. Fiscal challenges outside our control. I've already mentioned that we've got a further erosion of our assessable tax base. We're anticipating about 8% this year. We've got a stagnant economy. You've seen that with employment levels, with sales tax receipts. We're not going to see a big recovery in the economy here for several years. Inflation is running at about 3% right now, which is above our 2% revenue cap, remembering that the revenue cap accounts for or impacts 54% of our revenue. Okay, so we're losing ground by about a percentage point on 54% of our revenue. State cost shifts, highway user revenue. The state withheld $7 million in highway user revenue, okay? In order to keep funding some level of road repairs and road construction, we had to offset that by taking $4.4 million out of the general fund. That meant we had to divert $4.4 million from many other possible uses in the county, or just keeping it in reserve. That's an $11.5 million bust. That's a 10% bust on last year's budget. It's more than that. Add to that, the State Department of Assessment and Taxation cost was downstreamed by the state of Maryland last year. That's almost another $750,000. We're up to about a $12.2 million budget bust, over which we had absolutely no control. Proposed state actions for fiscal year 13. We've got a teacher pension shift. That has passed both the House and the Senate. This is a moving target. Right now, the Senate plan is over a period of 4 years. We will be essentially revenue neutral until 2016, and then it'll hit us for about $3.2 million. The House version downloads those pension costs over a 3-year period. So it hits us in 2015, and it hits us at about $3.3 million. The pension costs that are being shifted are what are called the normal costs. Many of you may have read that the state pension fund is underfunded, and it is. It's historically underfunded. The state is keeping that as their responsibility. What are called the normal costs are those costs that are going to be downstreamed to the counties going forward. State has also imposed through House Bill 1412 and Senate Bill, I think it's 838 or 848, $14.5 million in terms of rebasing what's called our maintenance of effort. This is very, very fluid, okay? The number up there, I can't tell you whether that's going to be the number or it's not going to be the number. The House version is less punitive. The last time we had a hard number, it indicated that we would take about a $6.5 million hit. In either case, whether it's 14.4 or 6.5, it's a hit we can't take. And we've been negotiating nonstop to see if we can get some further relief in that regard, because it's something that this county just simply cannot afford. Federal budget cuts in 2014, basically what that means is that anybody who lives on or who has a substantial portion of their operation funded by federal grants better hold on to their shorts, because they're not going to be forthcoming, at least at the same level that they have been. You've probably seen this before. This shows you the movement of our property tax rate, and I put this up here just to show you that little pretty fuchsia line that goes back, and you can see that our current tax rate is equivalent to the tax rate that we had back in the mid-50s, okay? The inflation rate versus the 2% revenue cap, I tracked this for 46 years. I graduated from high school in 1965 and had to enter the real world, so that's why I tracked it. And my real world experience was inflation wasn't ever 2% in my life. It was always something much higher. You can see the graph. Let me go back. It got as high as about, 18% under Jimmy Carter. And it has averaged over that 46-year period about 4.4%, 4.5%. As I said, it's running at about 3%. I think that's going to increase, principally because of fuel. Fuel affects everything. You've already seen it at the pump. You've also seen it in the grocery store. Let's talk a little bit about debt, because everyone watching what we've seen in Europe, what we've seen particularly in say Greece, and certainly right here at the federal level, is and should be concerned about debt levels. I'm showing you this because historically the county's policy regarding principal and interest is that it should not exceed or shouldn't get much above 12%. So that's the sort of greeny looking line that you're seeing up there. That's 12% of revenue. You can see that we were above that a little bit in 12. We would project to be a little bit above that in 13, about $300,000 above that in 13, and then it stair steps down because we're retiring debt. It would show you that we would still be able to fund and stay within that constraint of 12%, another $11 million in debt in fiscal 14, and then $16 million in debt in 17. I mention that because we still have $27 million in debt capacity over the next 5 years without going above our historical threshold. So we still have room to fund further capital projects. This shows you the purple line up top is the charter maximum. In some crazy formula, right now it's about $250 million, I think, is our charter maximum. The blue bars down below show you where we are. You can see that we're at about a third of our charter maximum. So for those out there who rather routinely compare us to Greece, we're not Greece, we're Wicomico County. Okay, what's our fiscal outlook? Assuming a fiscal year 13 property tax rate set to the revenue cap, and assuming reasonable legislative outcomes in Annapolis regarding pension shift and maintenance of effort, and also assuming a very slow recovery in employment, it's possible for Wicomico County, in our opinion, to fund Bennett Middle School construction bonds, to restore furloughs to our county employees after 3 years of furloughs and I think 4 years of no pay increase, to restore funding to our pension and OPEB trusts. And by the way, our pension trust is funded right now at about 94%. We got an opinion from our pension manager that it is very, very healthy and that our policy regarding funding is a very, very good and solid policy. We can fund limited capital projects, including some further Board of Education projects at other schools. We can meet a mandated requirement to relocate the state's attorney's office to other quarters and to use that vacated space in the circuit court to prepare for a fourth administrative judge. We've completed negotiations with the Fraternal Order of Police, and we're going to be passing that over to the County Council. And we believe that we can close the structural budget gap caused by the Great Recession. In other words, bring our receipts into line with our expenses as we go forward without continually having to go into our reserves. I want to talk to you just briefly about equalization ratchet down, and I bring this up because I think this confuses people at times. When I said that the revenue cap limit is an assumption in our budget, that's 7 cents. 5% of that has to do with equalization. Okay? So a nickel of it is simply saying that with the change in the property assessable base, to get the same revenue stream from property taxes, the rate has to increase by 5 cents. The revenue cap then permits you to then add to the equalized portion an amount equal to either the rate of inflation or 2%, whichever is less. In this case, is 2%. So that would allow us to add another 2 pennies. So that's 7 cents. Okay? And that 7 cents, again, impacts 54% of our revenue stream. If you fail, each time you fail to take advantage of your ability to equalize that revenue stream, you give it up forever, and that's called the ratchet down effect. So that dotted line would indicate the trend line on the rate if you equalize the rate each year depending on whether your assessable base is going up or it's going down. When it's going down, if you fail to equalize that rate, then you ratchet down, and you've got a new line that you're going to follow forever. You can never make it up because you're limited to a 2% increase. Okay? So that's what's called ratchet down. You give it up forever. Just to put it in perspective and for everyone to understand how we relate to the rest of the Eastern Shore of Maryland, our taxable income per capita is around the middle of the pack. Dorchester, Carolina, Somerset are lower. Our yield is a little bit higher because we have a higher local income tax rate. Ours is 3.1 currently. We've proposed moving into 3.2 as a way to avoid the impact of maintenance of effort. In the Senate bill, there was a clause that stipulated that any county that had their local rate at the maximum, state maximum of 3.2, did not have to rebase. The language isn't quite the language that we wanted because it indicated that it had to be already established. We have been negotiating with people at the state level that if we establish that rate by the end of this fiscal year, we'd like to see counties that did that included in that exculpation from rebasing. It's not a done deal, but they're listening. That's why we've put that on the table with the county council. That's why the county council moved it forward, so that if the state buys off on that, we can put that into effect. And just to give you an idea, for every $10,000 of adjusted gross income, moving our local rate 0.1% from 3.1 to 3.2 means $10 on your income taxes. Alternatively, if we have to make that up through property taxes, and the state of Maryland has said in this legislation that that any county that has a tax rate cap or a revenue cap can go above that rate cap in order to meet maintenance of effort. As a matter of fact, they're saying that you have to, and if you don't, they're going to withhold all of your income tax revenue and not downstream it to you. The impact on an individual would be 10 times the impact of this modest increase in the local rate. I don't like it. I don't think anybody in this room likes it, because I think having a high local income tax rate is really, from a tax structure standpoint, counterproductive. Okay? We only live 7 miles from the Sussex County border, and it's about a 15-minute drive to the Worcester County border, and they have a much lower local income tax rate. So it's very easy for people to take advantage of the employment here in Salzberg and Wicomico County, take advantage of our infrastructure, but very easily commute back home into a lower tax environment. So we're becoming a commuter county. I saw this happen in both Baltimore City, and I saw it happen in Baltimore County. People take advantage of the infrastructure, take advantage of the employment, but live in a lower tax environment. We are very vulnerable to that. So I don't like it, because I think in the long run it works against us. But if we can avoid a $14.4 million annual impact, it's not one time, it's forever, then I'll give them another $10 for every $10,000 of adjusted gross income. It's a bargain. Our real property assessable base, you can see it's the second lowest on the Eastern Shore. Our real property yield is the lowest on the Eastern Shore, and that's because of that tax rate I showed you. Our total county budget per capita is next lowest on the Eastern Shore. Cost of county services per capita is the lowest on the Eastern Shore. County employees per 1,000 residents, excluding the Board of Education, is the second lowest on the shore. Our Board of Education appropriation per student was $34.91. In 2012, I think it was $2,580. Okay, so it was about another $1,000 less than that. And I want to put that into context for you, because the state contribution was almost $8,500 per student. The state is paying 3 times what the county is for the education of a student. We have deferred infrastructure needs, and they're significant, estimated at about $138 million. Our fiscal year 13 CIP proposal was $17.4 million. It includes Bennett Middle School. CIP proposal for fiscal year 14 through 17 is about $60 million. Balance of unfunded CIP requirements are about $49 million, plus $12 million in county road works that are just simply unprogrammed, because we have no idea where the money would come from unless the state begins to downstream our highway user revenue again. Look at our capital investment plans. Our cumulative per capita compared to the rest of the Eastern Shore is $1,401 a year. Our average per capita is $156 this past year. Essentially half what Somerset County is spending. And you cannot compare Somerset County to Wicomico County in terms of infrastructure and vibrancy. So we not only have tremendous backed up infrastructure needs, we've got no funding for them. And we haven't been funding them. And with that, we'll open it up to any questions or any comments that you may have.
Thank you, Wayne. Well, the floor is open. Anyone with any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to come up to the mic in the center and identify yourself, and we'll hear what you have to say. Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Linda Hearn. I'm employed and reside in Wicomico County. I'm the project director for the Meals on Wheels and Senior Centers in Wicomico County, and we would like to thank the county for previous support and funding for our Meals on Wheels, and we would like to be considered for future funding and support. I'm just going to briefly read a letter that we received from a client. Our nutritionist at MAC did a survey, and as a result of this survey, we had a gentleman write us back. Firstly, I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere appreciation to the chef and staff for the superior meals that they prepare. I am very impressed with the delicious various selections that they are able to provide. Unfortunately, I am sure there are numerous government guidelines and regulations that must be followed governing the preparation of each meal. Secondly, as this writing, there has not yet been a bad or unsatisfactory meal provided by the program. Each of you should be very proud to be associated with such an outstanding program. Since I live alone and have become disabled, the Meals on Wheels program is an invaluable asset to me. Unfortunately, in order for me to move around my residence, I have to utilize a stationary walker. Thus, each movement is very slow, careful, and most exhausting to a congestive heart failure patient. Preparation of any meal is a long and tiring task. The Meals on Wheels program has given me the ability to remain in my home for a longer period of time and to be somewhat independent. In closing, I feel that I am richly blessed to be able to participate in the Meals on Wheels program. Each of the staff members that I have had direct contact with have gone the extra mile to assist me with any questions or issues that I have encountered. And I know other comments that we have that the meals are very important to our seniors in the community. Thank you for the time, and Dr. Carolyn Stegman has going to share with some statistics and facts with us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mr. Pollitt, and all the county commissioners and cities and so on. I'm Carolyn Stegman. I'm a consultant with MAC, and I'd like to point out that Wicomico County is experiencing a surge in senior population. In the next few years, we suspect that 40% of our population will be over 50. The come-heres are coming here because of the amenities and the climate, and those that are from here are aging in place. What we're also finding is that we live sort of in a have-not area in a very rich state, and a lot of those seniors are living solely on Social Security. And a lot of those seniors, particularly those over 80 years old, are considered at poverty level. So therefore, with the Meals on Wheels project, last year, just in Wicomico County, 24,000 meals were prepared and sent out from the inner aspects of Salzberg and the urban areas all the way down to the dirt and isolated roads of Tangier and all around Nanticoke. So again, the funding of Meals on Wheels to our seniors who are, those over 80, the greatest generation, we can't let them go hungry. Meals cost $7.60, which is up from last year. A lot of that's due to the increase in the gas budget. And so most people pay 61 cents for the meal. And a lot of them have been hardworking citizens all their life. These are not handouts. They want to play something. They have a lot of pride. And but that costs a lot of money. Wicomico County has been very, very generous to us in the past to fund this program so that our seniors don't go hungry, and we ask for that continuation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for all you do. And if you recall, Mr. Salzberg showed a slide that showed the county budget dropping from a high of about $132 million down to the current $108 million. During that fall, there have been two areas of county spending that I have not cut. One is the Senior Meals on Wheels program. The others are volunteer fire companies. And I will not cut those services. And God willing, we'll try to do better for them this year. So thank you for what you do. Yes, sir.
Tom Taylor, Colburn Mill Village, soon to be the most hated man in the room. I know this is tough times, and I know there are difficult decisions to make. I'm happy to hear that you were able to fund 90% of the pensions. I cannot fund my pension. I'm self-employed. I work with no benefits. I work with no pension plan. So what you take out of my pocket comes out of my retirement, living day to day. If the state is going to place a burden on the county that the county did not negotiate, I believe you should fight that and fight it as hard as you can. There are some things that I believe as a county resident that people should be responsible for. If you pay somebody a good salary, let them be responsible for their retirement. It's one of these things where when you say it's only a $10 increase in taxes, well, that's $10 coming out of hardworking individuals also to help somebody's other pension and retirement. And it doesn't seem fair, and these are hard times, and I know there has to be sacrifices, but the state has to learn that they can't just write the deals and then put them onto the counties. They really can't do that. And I'd like to see a harder fought battle from the people that have been elected in the county governments to make the state start sacrificing some of their pension plans and retirement plans.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. And I can assure you, your county government, along with all of the other county governments in Maryland through the Maryland Association of Counties, MACO, has been working vigorously this session to fight unprecedented challenges to county government from the state. We've spent many, many nights in Annapolis with the leadership of the House and the Senate. We've had our allies through MACO from one end of the state to the other battling for the very things that you're talking about. We've made progress, but there's still quite a bit of work to be done. But I couldn't agree with you more. We need to fight that fight. Yes.
Rick, you've known me a long time. Wayne, Gary, you heard what I said 2 weeks ago at a meeting on the other side of this building. Some of you were there, some of you weren't. For those of you that don't know me, about 30 years ago, the old WBOC AM and FM brought me into town to take over 2 bankrupt radio stations. I made them into Q105, and we had 36 employees, and we were in bankruptcy, and everybody thought I was going to fire everybody. But I don't believe in doing things that way. We didn't fire anybody. Instead, we found new revenue sources, and we made them the #1 radio stations in town under the name of Q105 and their AM. And we did very well. We made millions by finding new revenue sources. And I didn't have to cut anything. I said this 2 weeks ago at the meeting, and I'll say it again. I don't believe in cutting. I believe in finding new revenue sources. And this building is the revenue source that the county has to depend on, and it can't right now because we can't get the shows in here that we want, and we all know what I'm talking about. And I'm not a drinker myself, but until we have beer sales in this building, we're not going to be able to bring in the big shows, and we're not going to be able to have the revenue generation in this county that we need. We're sitting on a gold mine here, and we're not using it because, well, we all know what the because is. And we have to find a way around that, because this building could be our way out of all the problems that I just looked at. I said my piece. I know it's not popular with some people, and again, not being a drinker, it doesn't bother me one way or the other, but we'll never get a minor league hockey team in here. We'll never get any of the big shows in here until we're selling beer here.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate that. Anyone else like to join us? Well, then I do thank you once again for coming out. This is, again, it's a little bit of a different twist on our budget process. It's not so much to to present where we are with the budget yet. That is still developing in conversations and meetings with our departments. We won't have a real strong grasp of our budget opportunities until the General Assembly adjourns. It can't come too soon. Once we do, we will gather again together to present where we are before the final budget recommendation goes to the County Council. Once again, we're going to do this one more time tomorrow night in Hebron, hoping that folks on the west side will come out and exchange with us as we did tonight, and then on Monday night we'll be at the Pittsville Firehouse. So feel free to come out and enjoy and join us again. And in the meantime, you know where we all are. Feel free to call, stop by, check out the website, or let us hear from you. We really appreciate your attendance and especially your commitment and your love for Wicomico County. Thank you very much.